1985, City of London, very drab place. It was so drab that the image that the world's media used to describe the city was a shot across London Bridge in the morning rush hour, a telephoto shot so people looked really packed together. And it was men in bowler hats, rolled umbrellas, and briefcases, heads down, trudging across the bridge from London Bridge Station into the city to their place of work. They looked just like the slaves in the opening scene of Metropolis by Fritz Lang, that early silent film. They looked bloody miserable, if I might say so. And the reason is they were coming to a workplace. They were coming to somewhere where they earned their money, and that was all. And that was the image of the city, bowler-hatted men, and all men in those days virtually, coming to work in a workplace. Now, the shot they never showed you on the television was the shot at 5 o'clock in the evening, when those same bowler-hatted chaps ran back over London Bridge to the station so they could go home to the suburbs for fun. Yes, it's true. In those days, the suburbs were more fun than the City of London. Now, when I took over as chief planner, I thought we ought to do something about that. And there was a great imperative to do something about that, because the government had just announced in 1985, just before I was appointed, that financial services were going to be deregulated the following year. And that meant that the rest of the world could come and grab a slice of London if it wanted to. They could come and take part of the financial sector. They could come and deal in financial instruments and currency exchange and all of the other things that had previously been allocated purely to British companies, to British banks and British stockbrokers. So it was obvious to the City Corporation that we would need a new plan with new policies, if only to provide the space to accommodate all of these people. However, as you will all be aware, I'm sure, the City of London is the historic centre of London. It's been there for 2,000 years, ever since some drunken Romans sailed up the river and ran aground. So that's a tremendous heritage. And if you're thinking of new planning policies for a place, you destroy those mechanisms, those networks, and that heritage at your peril. After all, it's one of the greatest assets that you have. It's a 2,000-year trading history. And a 2,000-year trading history built on a very simple ingredient. The key to the city's success has always been, and will always be, gossip. I had a group of 9-year-old school children who came down from a little school in Cumbria about 18 months ago to visit London. They arrived in the city, they came into our marketing suite, and they saw a model of the City of London with a cluster of towers and the river, and their mouths open, and they looked at it, eyes wide open. And I said, no, then. I said, I've got to explain how this works, and it looks really complicated. And they all nodded. And I said, do any of you know about beehives? Oh, the hands went up. They all knew about beehives. They were all keen to tell me exactly how a beehive worked. And I said, well, if you look at that cluster of tall things over there, those are all beehives. Except inside, you won't find bees, you'll find bankers. Now then, I said, what do bees do in a bee? They make honey, of course. Well, I said, in this case, it's money, not honey. But I said, in order to do so, what do the bees need? Oh, the bees need to go and get nectar. Exactly, I said. And the bankers need a pub and a restaurant to go to get their nectar. And what happens when bees are gathering nectar? Oh, they brush up against the stamens and they collect the pollen and they take it to another plant. They knew all about this. I said, exactly. Now, those bankers, when they're getting their nectar, are busy overhearing what other bankers are saying, the gossip. And then they fly back to their beehive or bank and they take that gossip with them and they make more money out of it. So we thought that the answer in the city was to make it a more varied and more rounded place to attract the companies that wanted to be in London, and more importantly, to attract the best staff from around the world and to retain them. What you want your staff doing is walking from meeting to meeting between buildings in a real place where they'll bump into people, where they'll overhear things, where they'll pick things up on the grapevine as they go around. So we realized what we had to do was to try and produce a city that could provide extra accommodation and at the same time keep those networks. Luckily, there were a couple of developers called Lipton and Bradman who were planning a redevelopment on derelict railway land at the northern edge of the city at a place that became known as Broadgate. And that showed that you could build what we called ground scrapers, buildings of no more than 10 stories in height, around good public spaces with shopping and bars and cafes and all of the other facilities that people needed, better connected to public transport, and with excellent areas that people would want to come and visit. The space in Broadgate, the Broadgate Circus, became the most popular public space in the city within 1 week of opening. So the spaces were working. And as a planner, that gives me the greatest thrill. Any fool can design a good building. It takes a genius to design a good space. And a place needs good spaces. Good architecture is a nice add-on. It's a nice extra. It's the icing. But if the cake isn't made from good ingredients, good architecture won't do anything for you. Get the spaces right, get the permeability right for the pedestrians to walk through, places they want to be, and the place will come alive. That's the sort of development that's being carried out through the 80s and 90s and turn of the century. But eventually, all of these ground scrapers weren't enough, and the city needed to build tall. Now, building tall is a last resort. It's not a first resort. Only build tall if you've run out of land and you still need to accommodate people because you're amazingly successful. Don't build tall because you think it'll make you more successful than you were before. City of London, very little land, just 1 square mile. Hong Kong, very little flat land to build on. Manhattan, surrounded by water. There's a reason for building tall. Canary Wharf, again, you could say the same, surrounded by water. But Elephant and Castle, build a skyscraper. Did it make any difference? Isn't it still the Elephant and Castle, but now with a skyscraper? Frankfurt, that used to be a quiet market town. Now it's a quiet market town with skyscrapers. They thought they could compete with London by building tall. It made no difference. And the reason? Frankfurt is very boring. I've been there and I've told them it's the nightlife they need in Frankfurt, not the high-rise buildings. Nobody would choose to go to Frankfurt for a weekend. London has plenty of nightlife. The reason that 20 and 30-somethings want to come from all over the world to London is because of the party. They get the job to pay for it. I've often got into trouble by saying that London has the best free sex in the world, which is what attracts youngsters to London. So what have we brought into the city? Hotels, nightlife. We've improved the streetscape by planting trees, widening pavements, and narrowing the roads, as we've done in Cheapside. Shopping has been revitalised. Cheapside's become the high street again with that mixed-use development at one new change alongside. 3 floors of shopping, 4 of offices, and a public roof terrace on the top. The tops of so many of the new buildings have public facilities. The new walkie-talkie, it will have a 3-storey winter garden in the top, which you won't have to pay to go to. That was a planning condition. And you'll be able to look across at the Shard on the other side of the river and wave to the people who've paid £30 each to go up that building. So a public facility at the top, extra space and a little pocket park at the base of the building. The cheese grater, 5 floors of public space underneath the building, and a nickname. The image of the city that's used by the world's media now is the one that BBC News and BBC World use when they're talking about the City of London. And it's a view from Tate Modern across the Millennium Bridge with St Paul's and a cluster of towers on the skyline, and hordes of tourists flocking into the city with their heads up, looking happy in expectation. Now compare that with the London Bridge view at the start, and I think if we have made a change over the last 30 years, and I do say we because it's involved a large number of planners, a large number of gifted architects from all over the world, and some inspired developers to get this change, and of course the leadership from the elected representatives in the city. It's been very much a team game. But if we have made a change, it's to put the place into workplace.